Welcome back to episode 148 of the Block Runner podcast. I'm your host, William, always here with your co-host, Iman.
What's going on, everybody?
All right, and on the sticks, we got TJ.
Hey.
And most importantly, special guest, Justin Banon, CEO of Boson Protocol. Thank you for being with us, Justin.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. So we did a video about Boson Protocol
about a week or two ago.
Yeah.
And we've heard about you guys, of course. Whenever you first came into Decentralized, you made a big district launch.
Yeah, I remember that.
We were aware of the technology
Yeah.
and what it is you guys were offering and stuff, but because we're also developing a metaverse project ourselves, we're just so, I guess, like, we miss out on a lot of things that's going on.
Yeah.
Even though you guys are basically our neighbors in the metaverse, we still miss these things. But we got an opportunity to pay very close attention and actually do some deep diving into what it is you guys are building. And we quickly realized, you guys are building a very critical infrastructure component to not just the metaverse. I would call it like Web3 commerce, right? Like, just digital commerce, period.
Yeah.
So I think you guys are trying to prove that in the metaverse. So I guess the good first question would be, why did you choose the metaverse, first of all, to kind of prove or demonstrate like the utility of Boson Protocol?
Sure. Well, there's a couple of theses there. I mean, one is that, we believe that the metaverse is the next sort of kind of iteration of the sort of like interface, if you like.
Yes.
And we've seen in the web this kind of, well, even go back to like TVs, black and white TVs, then color TVs, right? I mean, that's like an inevitable and obvious interface upgrade, right? But it's still flat. And then you go to the web and that's kind of like a color TV, it's still flat, right? And then we kind of go mobile, and then it's social. But, really, if we could have an interface to virtual reality that was as full-featured as the interface to reality, why wouldn't we have it? I mean, that's the same argument as why did we go from black and white to color? Oh, because real life is color, right? Why would we ever choose to have a less rich experience than real life if it was an option, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's just, we'll look back and say, well, of course, the metaverse, once it became possible, of course, we were going to go for a 3D immersive digital experience because it's like more lifelike in the same way as we were always going to go from black and white to color TVs because it's more lifelike.
Yeah.
So we see the metaverse as this next iteration of this interface that humans use to interact with the web. And for us, the real metaverse is being built with Web3 technologies that kind of protect users and ensure that everyone gets to share in the value they create, etc. And so, for us, being Boson being this kind of Web3's commerce layer, etc. Essentially, it was natural for us to demonstrate our capabilities by enabling fully Web3 native commerce within the metaverse.
Yeah.
So as we understand, so we know Boson Protocol pretty well, just because, like Iman was saying, we're in the space. We like to pay attention to everything that goes on in crypto, but specifically the metaverse. So just for the audience, you give us like kind of like a rundown of exactly what Boson Protocol does, and talk about our NFTs, redeemable NFTs, phygital NFTs. If you could go into a little bit more detail on that, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Well, at its core, Boson Protocol, you can think of it as like TCP/IP for commerce, right? It's this base layer that enables commerce between a buyer and a seller in the same sort of way that like an Amazon or an eBay does, except just using code, right? Mm-hmm. So instead of having a kind of publicly owned extractionary company in between buyers and sellers to ensure fair exchange and to take money and to send goods and to manage disputes, it's a piece of code, right? It's a piece of code that has, a combination of game theory, and if the game theory doesn't resolve it, the disputes can go to like be escalated to independent dispute resolvers. But that's the core of Boson. But it's fully built on Web3 technology, so it can plug into, especially Web3 worlds like Decentraland. And the way it works is a seller will say, okay, I'm going to sell this red bicycle, and they will offer that on Boson. That creates an offer, and a buyer, if they see that offer, which could be, it could be on OpenSea, it could be on a seller's website, it could be on the Boson DApp. Or it could be like in a shop, in an immersive environment like the metaverse, or someone could be wearing an item, right, in the metaverse that's a digital item but has a physical counterpart that's for sale. And so you kind of click on that, and then the buyer can purchase what we call a redeemable NFT. And what happens is the buyer's money gets locked up, they get issued with a redeemable NFT, and then that buyer can either go and straight away redeem, which is fine, in which case it's just like a bridge from the metaverse to the physical world, right? It's like a trust bridge. You could go and, fine, if you want to buy something from Nike, most people are going to trust that. But you might do a peer-to-peer exchange in the metaverse. So you might buy from a new, reasonably unknown creator in the metaverse. And Boson enables you to do that in a fully, kind of trust minimized way. You can put your money in and have strong and credible assurances that either you get the item or your money back. So you wander around the metaverse, see something that advertises a physical for sale, and trust in Boson that you can go and. So you get this redeemable NFT, but one of the major use cases then for that NFT is, it could be that NFT is only available to you because you've got these other NFTs, or you're wearing this other special wearable that's now unlocked the ability to buy this special physical from this brand, say, right? So you've got this kind of token gating community loyalty play. Anyway, you get this NFT, and then you can do what you want with it, right? You can redeem it, but you could trade it. You could go and put that on OpenSea and flip that like any other NFT. You could hold it. So we've got, lots of use cases where, like luxury wine and spirits, or, like luxury whiskey companies tokenizing, like cases of whiskey that mature in like 5 years, right? So you go and buy this RNFT and you hold it, and then 5 years time, the value spikes and you sell it to someone that goes and takes possession of the whiskey and actually sells it. You never touch the whiskey, right? So it's like and so you can transfer it. You could go and buy this thing, and he may have a nephew that likes these kind of high-end sneakers or whatever, and he lives in the other side of the world, you transfer. So you can do all these things with it, just like any other sort of NFT. And then eventually, someone will then redeem it. And all the while, with Boson Protocol, it gives the sellers the ability to earn secondary royalties on physicals as well. Because the protocol provides this assurance to buyers that they're not going to get rug pulled. It's in the interest of each buyer to use the protocol rather than something like OpenSea to sort of do the exchange. That way they're not going to get rug pulled. And so then, and therefore, as the protocol is doing these successive secondary sales, it can return these kind of what we call perpetual royalties back to the original creator, thus supporting this sort of ecosystem that we have.
What's interesting, Justin, is before we actually went live here and started recording, we were talking about the banking crisis and all that, and in a completely unrelated conversation a few weeks ago, Iman and I were talking about the banking crisis and all that, and how inflation is going to skyrocket the prices of food, milk and all that stuff. And we were thinking, is like, what if these companies like Burger King, these companies issued NFTs to represent their food, and there's basically these NFTs represent like a futures contract that people can redeem this NFT for food when a burger is about $100, but you bought this NFT for $5. All of a sudden, you have like a very valuable asset that's tradable, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting that use case, and also whether or not it can be applied, I guess, to stabilize in any way, like I guess the commodities of the products that are being sold themselves, in counter to like any sort of like macroeconomic situation. I think it's a great idea. Do you think there's any validity behind that, Justin?
Well, I mean, if we enter a period of hyperinflation, then I mean, Funnily enough, just this morning I saw a tweet from my good friend Trent McConaughey, the CTO of Ocean Protocol, and he said that in Argentina, Argentina has the highest number of cars per population. And the reason is that people buy cars because they lose value slower than the peso. Therefore, they buy cars as a store of value. And if you buy a car, you're not going to take public transport, you're going to drive it.
Yeah.
So people are driving cars as a store of value, right? And so, equally, I mean, Boson, the fundamental financial engineering inside Boson, and it was, Boson was designed by some amazing kind of DeFi financial engineers. The world's top blockchain lawyer, Dr. Primavera de Filippi, wrote Blockchain and the Law, and the protocol designer is one of the Ethereum Foundation designing ETH2. So right at the center of this is a lot of pretty sophisticated theory. And one of them is that this is a forward contract, right? How do you tokenize a physical asset? How do you get that tether? Well, either you have an Amazon tying the two, but then get all those problems. But what we have is a forward contract, right? So you could imagine in a situation with hyperinflation of this kind of forward selling, which is also something that we have, partners doing. It's really interesting if you're going to do a restaurant opening, or if you're going to do even a product launch, right? You can do a decentralized Kickstarter with Boson, where you can go and sell pre-sell 1,000 units of a product, and using Boson protocol, and then use that as as collateral to get a loan on the money. So absolutely, brands could pre-sell at today's rate, products, and Boson could act as a store of value like that. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. So could you get into a little bit more into, I guess, the mechanics that ensure trust within this network of, I'm sure at the end, the objective of the Boson Protocol Foundation is to onboard as many brands that already have established trust in order to kickstart, get the momentum going as far as adoption and user and an actual digital commerce activity, right? A market. Right. But at some point you're going to have much more independent, individuals trying to establish their own commerce presence that don't have any real established reputation, right? Think of an eBay or an Etsy, something like that in the metaverse or wherever. What is it that actually ensures on the buyer and seller side that these commerce transactions are trustworthy? Are there any primitives that are still lacking in order to build this out?
No, the core. I mean, we're on V2 of the protocol now. So we had V1. We launched 18 months ago, and we launched, which was mainly designed by me. It worked. It proved the feasibility, but in parallel, we'd sort of raised some money and onboarded this incredible team. And so V2 is basically built by this incredible team as a production grade protocol. That is all built in place, debugged, tested, if you're a seller who is kind of familiar with Web3, you can go and use the Boson DApp to sell products, in a kind of fully decentralized way, that is all live. But where we are right now is we are building, I guess, the bridges from Web3 to more mainstream. To more mainstream usage. So whether that is smaller sellers or bigger sellers, we're building tools that mean you can sell anywhere. So you can do a physical drop in the same way as at the moment you can do an NFT drop. You can do a physical NFT drop using Boson protocol, where you drop a physical item in the metaverse, and we're going to be doing a kind of promotion that means that if you're a seller and you launch on Boson protocol, you get a metaverse in the metaverse kiosk for free as part of that whole launch.
Hmm.
But the key is that sellers can do a physical drop, which is available in the metaverse, that can be available on OpenSea. It can integrate with their website. We're building out over the next couple of months integrations with Unreal and Unity, so that it integrates in games, so that you could be playing Fortnite and you could sell a physical item to someone else just by selling an NFT, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, that's kind of meeting some random in Fortnite who says that they have this particular, whatever item.
Yeah.
It's pretty risky. It's a pretty risky transaction, but with Boson, it's kind of trivial because that's what Boson does, right? And so in all of these, it's kind of this whole sell anywhere. But part of that value proposition for brands is you sell anywhere, but we're not trying to steal the eyeballs like an OpenSea or an Amazon is trying to sort of steal the business, steal the eyeballs, from brands. We are an infrastructure play. We have, we're on a path to full decentralization, and we have an ethos that, we're trying to create a democratic, kind of commerce, economy, where everyone gets to share in the value they create. So it's kind of selling anywhere, but then these brands can then integrate like a redemption widget, which we call it, into their own website. So they could be selling here, OpenSea, in games. They can be selling, Decentralized. People go buy these NFTs, and then when they finish trading them or whatever, and they want to come and redeem for the physical, they come back to the brand's website and go through a redemption process there. That's our kind of key strategy now, is building those bridges to mass adoption.
Okay, so basically you have a protocol that services the front end, let's say websites, the metaverse, and then part of that protocol is a connection to brands like Tommy Hilfiger. And let's say you purchase like a digital t-shirt for Tommy Hilfiger that you can wear in Decentraland. You can also redeem that NFT and on Tommy Hilfiger's website. Would that be correct?
Yeah, so let's say that Tommy Hilfiger wants to do a physical drop. He wants to create a physical collection that's sold via an NFT mechanism, right? So these NFTs are like an IAU. It's like an NFT voucher.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Boson will create those vouchers, and then and that's all live, and people can come and do that through our DApp and use our marketplace or create their own branded stores. They can do that today, and as of next week, they're going to be able to then sell those NFTs, in the metaverse, in on our DApp, on their website. They'll be able to do drops on OpenSea. So basically, Boson, that sell side will plug into all of these different types of world, providing this kind of trust bridge where people can go and buy these things. And then once you've got one of these redeemable NFTs and you've finished trading, we want to redeem it, you go to a redeem point. And that redeem point can either be with Boson or, more commonly we're seeing the demand for, brands obviously wanting to kind of cast that net wide all across these different environments, and then bring all those customers back to redeem on their own side.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So there's basically a lot of collaboration with a bunch of brands who are interested in the metaverse. So do you see any resistance from brands when introducing them to the idea of the metaverse? Is it something that they're interested in, or is there a lot of like convincing happening?
I mean, that all changed when, Facebook announced its big entry into the metaverse. I mean, all brands now, almost without exception, have a metaverse strategy. And, when I sort of last year, we had interviewed Tommy Hilfiger, he said, well, look, this is just like, the advent of e-commerce. A lot of brands got caught out and left behind. Then social, then mobile. And now there's been enough waves of innovation that brands realize that this can kind of upturn the whole, competitive landscape. So, his view is, if you're not too early, you're too late.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of that, even with, kind of tightening, kind of economic environment, that brands invariably have a strategy for this next great interface. So no, we're not seeing sort of lots of resistance. I mean, our strategy has changed from last year, when we were very much in prototype mode and we were very much working directly with big brands, and we're doing a number of integrations at the moment, but our main thrust is now plugging into all the major metaverse builders. So we've got strategic partnerships with Metaverse Group, Renovi, Landvault, and a host of others, so that they can work with brands to plug in Boson as sort of infrastructure across the metaverse, and likewise, working on plugging into, the kind of Web3 kind of connectors of like Unity and Unreal as well. So very much getting that plumbing in place, and moving to a more sort of integrated channel partner model, rather than and of course there are certain brands that we work directly with, but increasingly we're working through an ecosystem of partners.
So it's interesting because you've emphasized a couple of times of how decentralization and the ethos of Boson protocol is very much like a community driven protocol, and you're taking steps to decentralize further. And as we know, just truly decentralizing a protocol is a process.
Yeah.
There's many different considerations to that. These organizations still have to operate as a business, even at a protocol that's decentralized. Like, there has to be some sort of sustainability aspect in order for the protocol to continue into the long term. So what is it that's going to account for that? I'm assuming there's some sort of fee structure involved in the protocol layer itself, right? That
the business model, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, to ensure that the DAO is always, remains healthy and, can contribute, the community can continue to contribute to this development. Can you speak a little bit on that?
Sure. I mean, there is a transaction fee which the protocol levies for any kind of transactions on the protocol, which is currently set at like 0.5%. And so that, at scale, as we fully decentralize, essentially, because with a protocol, there's a big build up front, right? There's a huge expense of like building, but then you get to a point where that core protocol is now, kind of is operating, and it can then operate at scale.
Yeah.
So then it can run more and more transactions through it with very, very little incremental cost, and just connecting those 0.5% transaction fees. And so that's the whole kind of sustainability model for Boson protocol. Yeah.
Which network is Boson protocol on? Is it Polygon?
Currently, we're on Polygon. We're about to launch on Ethereum. V1 was actually on Ethereum, but a lot of our demand was on Polygon. We still see a role for, Ethereum, perhaps for sort of higher value items and items that are like directly attached to some of the more prominent sort of NFT projects that might want to do physicals that are kind of token gated with their kind of CryptoPunks or something like that. Yeah.
Do you foresee a future where Boson protocol is on basically all the popular networks like Solana and Binance and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a multi-chain strategy. I mean, obviously it depends how many chains there are, but our expectation is to be on all of the sort of major chains, enabling decentralized commerce there wherever there's sort of sufficient demand and liquidity.
So is it because do you think that, like, when you're talking to a brand and kind of introducing Boson protocol and getting them into kind of like the Web3 space and all that, do you think that they'll be choosing a network? Like, say for example, you're speaking to a Chinese brand and they're like, I want to mint my NFTs on let's say Solana or specifically some specific chain. Is it because you think they want a specific chain that you're integrating, or is it just you're integrating on a network simply because there's liquidity, there's traction there, or like what's the metrics to make that decision?
Well, I think, for brands, the metrics are going to be things like, who else is on that network, right? It's going to be interoperability. It's going to be a major part of it. Then things like, settlement times and transaction fees are obviously also a major factor. It's one of the big drivers. I mean, so, you take, for example, like Polygon, there's, it's got low fees, fast to settle, and lots of other people on it, and high interoperability. Mm-hmm. But other brands are selecting some of the other sort of layer twos because of specific structures, like the ability to run their own chain, where they have a bit more control, for example. And so that's I guess one of the factors that might make brands sort of deviate from the standard. But I think there are sort of very strong network effects once you get one of these chains that gets a particular domain, like you've seen with DeFi, or with commerce as well. It becomes a bit of a runaway effect, really, because everybody wants to be on the same chain. It's like positive competition. You want to be on the same chain with similar sorts of organizations, so you can plug in to similar environments, etc.
Yeah, I was only curious because we're sort of facing the same thing. It's like, do we integrate with all the chains? Do we just recommend, like when we work with projects, do we recommend like you should just mint on Polygon? Like maybe that's the right way to go, but it seems like a multi-chain kind of like future is the way to go, just because we can't really know which chain is gonna like just dominate, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe there isn't gonna be one chain or a few chains that dominate. Maybe it's just like there's purposes for all these different chains. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I mean, I think the whole ZK angle is probably is going to disrupt the current status quo. I mean, if you took that out, then I think what you're seeing is that you're going to get these kind of dominant designs where there'll be certain chains that get an advantage where they get more users, and then more users attract more users, and that attracts more applications, and they get a runaway effect, right? And it's very hard to change that. But I think, the huge improvements that sort of these sort of ZK chains are going to bring, and we're seeing that, with Optimism and Arbitrum and stuff. I think that could upset the current status quo. But once that settles down, I think those same dynamics will happen, where you will get, a kind of coalescing of users around certain chains. But my personal view is that it's a multi-chain world, but there will be chains optimized for different uses, right? And then you'll have one winner for different uses. Yes. So, Ethereum is a great place to store lots of value, right?
Yep.
Polygon is a great place to do, kind of lower cost, kind of things but there's a trade-off there between, kind of fees and security, for example.
Right.
And I think you might then see, some of these other solutions that might be more tailored towards, different use cases. And so you'll see a multi-chain world with winners in each domain, I think.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I think we kind of have our own answer to this, and I think it's going to match yours, but I want to get your take. So why did you decide to leverage specifically Decentraland as like your go-to metaverse to showcase Boson protocol?
Well, I mean, the version 1 widget that we had last year was on Decentraland, and so that's when we made that initial decision. And mainly it was due to how developed a metaverse it was at the time. The fact that it supports smart contract interactions. It's also got a great community behind it, and we found the Decentraland team super forward thinking and supportive of what we were doing. And at the time when we did our first metaverse widget, it was actually really hard. I mean, not many people, it's hard to get metaverse devs. It was hard, all this stuff wasn't worked out in the way, we've just done the second widget. And to be honest, I think it was probably 10x easier than the first, right? That's how far. So those were the kind of reasons that we made the original decision. And then launching this widget on version 2 of the protocol, Decentraland was like that natural partner for us, and we'll be launching that at Metaverse Fashion Week later in the month.
So have you found any, because we've identified a lot of how the metaverse seems to be, it's growing in phases for sure, and a lot of these new entrants in this space seem to be offering a much more static experience that doesn't have as much robust functionality that's needed in order for like a Boson protocol kiosk to even operate or to service, a user base the way typical users would expect, right? So do you see that as like a huge dilemma as far as like the metaverse space needs more infrastructure in order to enable more, protocol experiences to exist? Or is everything fine?
No, I mean, it was a major problem for us.
Yeah.
Sounds like we'd sort of rehearsed this, but we know we haven't. But it was a major problem for us. I mean, it's one of the main reasons why we went with Decentraland is because it does support functionality to run this widget. But what we've also developed and is kind of queued up for release, we're in the very nice position as a tech startup where we've actually got technology queued for release now, first time ever, right? Normally we're waiting. But and this is a kind of functionality that's currently called Shell NFTs, because I and the tech team named it. We're going to need to get marketing to give a better name. But basically what that means is instead of having to run Boson protocol natively and generate these NFTs on the fly, you can kind of pre-mint the NFTs that are like zombie NFTs, Boson NFTs, and they can then be sold in OpenSea or one of these less full function, anywhere that NFTs can be sold.
That's interesting.
And then once the purchaser has bought it, this thing gets animated, it's a zombie without a soul, and then Boson injects it with a soul, and it becomes a fully fledged Boson redeemable NFT. So, and that was a massive dilemma for our adoption. We had to go, in order to integrate, we had to go and either get people to do stuff on their side or work with platforms that had this functionality that we could build on. And so we've kind of sidestepped that, and that's going to be pretty massive for us. It still means, though, that we can do much cooler things in Decentraland than these worlds that are less full function, but we can certainly now sell and drive mass adoption of Boson into anywhere that NFTs are sold.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty much what I anticipated. Going into Decentraland, they have just much more robust functionality, and it supports these applications, these apps that people can build.
Correct.
And we feel like that's a fundamental necessity for the metaverse. If we're going to be in an industry that many predict is going to be $1 trillion industry, there has to be a commerce layer, an application layer. All of these like specific functionalities need to exist.
Yeah.
And a lot less like gallery type of metaverses.
But nonetheless, like I said, metaverse will mature in these growth phases, right? And
they would.
We're in that static era at the moment, just because
it's just
technology takes time to develop, right? So the fact that you guys have come up with like a workaround solution to still service like this era of the metaverse growth cycle,
that's huge.
That's tremendous. I mean, you're still establishing that primitive layer of commerce, like independent of the lack of technical infrastructure to enable it. Which is, kudos to you guys and your team for sure.
I mean, it's like the other way we describe it is a dumb widget, right? Again, the marketers will come, but you don't need a smart environment. It's just like a dumb NFT that goes in there. You buy it, and then all the smart stuff happens outside. But you know, and I mean, to your point also about these kind of adoption cycles, I mean, I studied a lot of that technology adoption stuff, and you know, you read the textbook, and it's like, yeah, it's an S curve, because initially, you know, the technology erupts, everyone thinks, wow, there's a big bubble, the technology is not ready, people put loads of money in, the technology is not mature enough, and there's a crash, financial expectations, and a crash. But all of that money installs the infrastructure such that, you know, later on, people can then start building the applications on top, and then you get this second kind of what they call like a golden age, where we saw it in the web, railways, everything, right? Where then you just get this kind of, you know, long-term, multi-decade exponential growth, and I think that's where we are, for sure, with the metaverse, and you know, certainly with crypto.
So, Justin, could you explain how a brand who wants to sell digital items, right, through the NFTs from Boson Protocol, how do they onboard onto the protocol? Does it have to be a major brand, or can it be someone from Etsy trying to sell physical items using NFTs?
So it can be either. So if you're, you know, someone from Etsy, you want to sell physical items as NFTs, then you come to the Boson website, bosonprotocol.io, click a button, and you know, at the moment it's a closed beta that's going to be opening up in some point in April, so that it will be fully self-serve. But at the moment, you click a button, and then the Boson team will support you in setting up a branded store. You know, and all of that is kind of free. As I mentioned, there will also be offering a free space in the metaverse and a metaverse kiosk as well, so you can do metaverse commerce. You can do that. For bigger brands, again, they can contact us through the same route, and we will provide them with a bit more sort of white glove treatment, and also we'll kind of work with them and our network of integrators and builders in order to support them to get you know, out of metaverse and decentralized commerce what their sort of objectives are. And so we provide a lot more kind of consultancy and advice for brands there.
Okay.
You know, and through this sort of network of suppliers as well.
Yeah, as soon as we were super early in Decentraland, we saw the launch in like the alpha launch, I would call it, in 2019, and it was basically a gray grid, but we could run around as avatars. It was cool, right? And then it was a closed environment as far as making wearables in Decentraland, and then all of a sudden, probably like a year after that, they made it open for everybody to make wearables. And all of a sudden, we saw an explosion of all kinds of creativity and stuff. And
an actual like semblance of an economy emerging, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I see very similar. It's like once you guys have an open kind of platform for people to come in and start minting these NFTs, like from like the Etsy and like eBay type of users to, you know, the huge brands. Yeah, I think we're going to see like a huge explosion on like the usage of Boson Protocol.
Yeah, you're going to see like things you probably haven't even dreamt of as far as like how they're going to practically leverage the protocol. And
that brings up
that happened to us. Like, you know, they always shock us, the community, when you enable them and give them the tools to innovate. Like they're going to produce something you haven't even imagined.
Yeah, for example, on our platform, Justin, someone submitted a DEX as an NFT. Yeah. So in our platform, people can purchase a decentralized exchange, install it on, you know, any random land, and people can swap tokens. Right on the land. So like it has huge implications. Like we could bring in the DeFi ecosystem. All of a sudden, you're seeing like a bunch of food coins in Decentraland and like all these DeFi protocols, and so that's the power of like user generated content, and like that's a huge aspect of Boson Protocol. I was gonna ask, so when leveraging the Boson Protocol is, what if there's like nefarious types of activities, like you know, someone tries to sell drugs using Boson Protocol? Do you guys do any curation or like any verification of what's being sold?
So any of the any of the items that would be surfaced via the Boson marketplace would be that, or anything like that wouldn't be surfaced. And there's also through, one of the main utilities of Boson is it enables fair exchange, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it ensures that the buyer gets what he was supposed to get and the seller gets, what she was supposed to get. And so for nefarious activities like that, our dispute resolvers would refuse to resolve. So therefore, the whole point of transacting over Boson is this kind of, it gives you fair exchange assurance, would be removed. And so these people may as well trust each other, right?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of the way that Boson kind of curates those sort of activities. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because any sort of like marketplace, you have to consider these kinds of things. Like, I remember, I think it was on Rarible or maybe it was OpenSea where there was like NSFW content and they had to like figure it out because all of a sudden it was like on the front page.
Yes.
And
it overtook the market at one point. And that was definitely Rarible. Yeah.
Rarible, okay, yeah. So there's like, of course, whenever you open up to like the public, right, they're going to use it for whatever they want to use it. And so it's always important to consider, this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. So what is the process to onboard, like, I guess, what's like your go-to-market strategy in terms of, do you focus mostly on the brands, the fact that people can purchase phygital items? Like, what do you think is like the most optimal like approach to the market when it comes to Boson protocol and like phygital NFTs?
Well, we've got two strands of that go-to-market strategy. So we kind of follow the kind of pretty classic technology adoption theory of Geoffrey Moore and this whole crossing the chasm, right? So we recognize that there's this like early adopter community of people that love using Web3 protocols, that want self-serve, that want to go use the protocol, upload their stuff, sell it, like, I don't know, want to go and start selling merch for their favorite project in a decentralized way and can do that, right? And so the core DApp that we've built, and we're just optimizing at the moment, really targets that early adopter community. But that's not going to work for your more, what we call like early majority, more mainstream users. They can't directly do that stuff with, Web3 and stuff. They need kind of to have some of that complexity abstracted, and they also need to do stuff at scale.
Yeah.
So that's the next set of tools that we've got, which are kind of, some products like, for example, Boson Enterprise, which enables sellers to abstract away some of the complexity of the blockchain and enables them to do this selling at scale, and often then with the support of one of our integrator partners. So that if you're a big seller and you want to kind of do this at scale, it's a bit like, the difference between Red Hat and Linux, if you like. And so for that, for the bigger sellers and that more mainstream audience, we have a slightly different go-to-market strategy where it's like more tools, heavier touch with some of our partners to support them to do that. So at the moment, that's that's how our go-to-market strategy is kind of breaking down.
I'm curious. Obviously, a lot of Boson protocol and a lot of metaverse projects, ecosystems, whatever, are going to be entirely dependent on, I guess, the metaverse sector's adoption curve as a whole. So, basically, we need more users in the metaverse, more reasons to stay in the metaverse, as opposed to remaining in our 2D interface experience of the internet, the web it is as today. So, so whether it's a hardware's breakthrough, infrastructure components like Boson or whatever else that kind of like contribute to an actual economy being present in the metaverse to attract, native users. We kind of spoke off cam. So what do you see as potential catalyst moments yourself? Like we spoke off about Amazon entering into the digital commerce space. Is that potentially something as big as what we saw whenever Facebook pivoted to Meta? All of a sudden, mass awareness was brought in. Or what else do you see on the horizon that could bring?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are two major kind of macro trends colliding at the moment for us. And you know, if we exactly as you said, I mean, if you look back at Facebook entering the metaverse with Meta, that caused a huge zeitgeist for the metaverse and was great for, you know, like the decentralized metaverse projects and stuff. And yeah, of course, we're seeing sort of, you know, kind of like these like waves of adoption.
Yeah.
But that created a huge tsunami of awareness, and adoption has triggered a lot of this like long-term building. And you know, and likewise, you know, there was just sort of a pre-announcement that Amazon is now going to be doing an NFT marketplace and also NFTs for physicals. And you know, the point. So that's like the first. You know, kind of concept. The second is with all this banking crisis, right?
Yeah.
And the two are actually kind of connected. So, you know, with the banking crisis, you're going from this kind of trusted assets, right? You know, a deposit receipt, because I've just put $1,000 in the bank, is a trust-based asset, right? It's like what's called soft money. And you know, trust in those financial systems is once again really eroding, right? And you're seeing this flight to safety, this flight to the hard money, the provable assets of the likes of Bitcoin, right? No one can take your Bitcoin away. And I think the reason for that is there is a motive, but there was a motive in 2008, but there's now a means, right? So it's a real alternative. And it's that motive and means that causes the change, right? But likewise, you know, it's great for us that Amazon are entering the space, going to be issuing physical NFTs. But really, what's the point of having a physical NFT when you've got the same sort of guarantees as you would have for a piece of paper with an IOU on it, or just a digital? I mean, I used to run the Priority Pass network. I used to head that up globally. We issued $1 billion worth of digital vouchers a year. I could have just swapped the file format for NFT and said, there you go, but it would have meant nothing. Still had the unilateral right to cancel it. Still could, you know, you're not giving users any stronger claim. The whole thing about NFTs is just like Bitcoin. If you've got one in your wallet, no one can take it away. And the underlying value. So what Boson is like, it's like what you know, referred to as like hard property. And so we've got hard money, Bitcoin, hard property, Boson. If you've got a Boson NFT, you've got this strong and credible commitment that either you're going to get that item or your money back. And I think that is the world we're moving to, where you've got these kind of like provable assets instead of these trust-based assets.
Totally agree. Yeah, because what difference does it make that you can go to Amazon and buy these NFTs when it's like backed by Amazon, and like, Amazon could just decide not to send it or not to honor it or whatever it is. Like that's not the point of NFTs.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you can't send you can't sue Satoshi and tell him take someone's Bitcoin away, right?
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
That's the difference, and it's a point that a lot of people miss for now. But the collapse of the banking system once again is, you know, and to be honest, you know, us in crypto, we've taken a real kick in over the last year. Some of it, you know, rightly, but let's not forget, most of these financial institutions that failed were centralized institutions dealing in crypto, right?
Correct.
Right. Not all of them.
DeFi stood strong, not all of them, but you know, or centralized, very centralized projects, right?
For
not
sure.
projects that had, you know, all of these kind of immutability and some of that we're heading towards in crypto. And so now it's, you know, seeing all of these kind of banks and stuff, you know, failing and faltering. I think it's a great reminder, and I think the pendulum's swinging the other way, where we're going, hold on a minute. You're talking about as if we've got this wonderful traditional financial system, and here you've got these rebels threatening it with crypto. No. Crypto was born. I mean, crypto was born off of the back of the failure of the traditional financial system and the fact that it is a complete Ponzi scheme, right? That's why we have crypto. So now we have the motive and the means. And I mean, I think Balaji, with his $1 million Bitcoin in 90 days, is a little bit over-egged. But it's a point. It's a point well made. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the pendulum is going to swing back the other way. And you know what? You know, we founded Boson during the last crypto winter, and this time I think there's 100 times more money sitting on the sidelines, knowing that when crypto, like when you get a crypto bull market, what happens?
Yep.
And I think we are going to see a massive transition of wealth, permanent transition from traditional to crypto.
100% agree with everything you're saying. And to your point, if we go back to FTX days in November, Sam Bankman-Fried was like, hey, everything's fine for like a week. And then it just collapsed. And what is the government saying today? Everything is fine. Like, maintain your trust in the banking system when all of us in the crypto community, we know that it's about to collapse.
Yeah, Jerome Powell gave a pretty standard speech yesterday.
Yeah,
it was pretty much
standard.
said exactly that. It was very like, everything's fine.
Yeah.
You know, it's nothing to be worried about.
Yeah.
But that's his job, right? Is to make sure that's that image of confidence is maintained, because that is what holds everything up, right?
It is.
Yeah.
So do you?
I did see. I saw the. I saw that. You know, the articles saying that, you know, the Fed or the US government are looking for ways to ensure all bank deposits, and then there was like a little sum of how much that was, right? I mean, it's like
2 trillion.
Hey, I mean, it's like
uncoverable essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, unless, because Jerome Powell said,
unless you print 2 trillion, right? Unless you print it,
which you have.
If you lose any money in a bank, we will print you. We will print, we will reprint your money for you, right?
Yeah, basically devaluing
that's the only way.
the whole amount, right?
Well, that is Balaji's claim, right? That is the bet he's making. He's making, like, the banking crisis is at such a tipping point, and like it hasn't triggered yet, but once it does, there's going to be a bank run of all bank runs, I guess, and that, as a result, the Fed has no choice but to bail out all depositors. Therefore, $1 million Bitcoin.
Yeah,
right. It's a tremendous prediction, but
90 days is asking for a lot, but eventually it will get to $1 million. We just have to wait for more banks to collapse, I guess.
Correct. Yeah, like you're saying, that mass transition away from the perception of like traditional finance into the decentralized financial realm. But are you at all concerned about, like, you know, the United States' regulatory stance as a reaction to all of this against crypto? Like, do you think this is going to have a negative impact on the Web3 space in any way?
I think it will. Well, I listened to a podcast with Hester Peirce, the female SEC commissioner, who is super pro. Let's have a dialogue with crypto. Complete opposite of Genza. So I think there is hope there, right? I think there is hope there. But I think a bad regulatory posture by the US against crypto is not going to be great in the short term. But if the US banking system is failing, who cares, right? I mean, it's going to be the captain of the Titanic bemoaning the lifeboats, right? I mean, who cares if they're the wrong color? I mean, your ship is sinking. Some of us are in lifeboats. I don't think it will be that relevant. But I think the greatest challenge is going to be like for the American economy and the American people, in that they're going to miss out on this next huge wave of innovation. I mean, like the British, we triggered the first industrial revolution, and then we were not, we were bit players in the second, because the US and Germany just got all this other financial regulatory infrastructure in place to harness, all of this innovation, and we were just too slow and, probably corrupt to do that. And so, America's had a great run with the first wave of digital and technology and stuff. But if you screw up the regulation, you've got like the Middle East, you've got Hong Kong, you've got all these other places chomping at the bit to be the next San Francisco. So, not a good move.
Dude, we're going to take a clip of that, Justin, and we're going to send it to the government, Gary, because it's important. I mean, this is the same thing everybody keeps saying, is like, if if the United States shoots themselves in the foot,
Yeah.
they're not only going to lose anyway, but they're going to be left behind by every other country that supports crypto. And in my opinion, I don't think the United States will do that. I don't think they'll do that. I think they'll probably create a CBDC, hoard a bunch of Bitcoin, back that CBDC by Bitcoin. All of a sudden, they remain a superpower, because that would be the smart thing to do. But I don't know. It really depends on their intelligence, I guess.
Well, I guess it's contributing to their lack of understanding of, and I guess relying on the SEC to being like the ultimate like decider in these types of matters. Like relying on legacy like regulations to enforce actions on like this new frontier. That's the problem. The government doesn't want to do any action.
I mean, the other one I heard, that I listened to another really good podcast by the Circle CEO. I forget his name now, but Circle want to have what's called a narrow bank, which is this concept where they can deposit their money directly with the Fed with no fractional reserve banking risk.
Interesting.
And they get like interest paid on it, and they get the full security of hard money lodged with the Fed.
Okay.
The Fed have refused. They say it could disrupt the commercial banking sector, and but you know, centralized crypto players are trying to eliminate the risk, because these are fully regulated, right?
Yes.
Trying to eliminate the risk of the fractional reserve system,
Of course.
so that they have strong foundations for, you know, and in that case, the Fed will say no. So it's complete hypocrisy, right? When you talk about, oh, you know, these kind of, you know, crypto companies that are, you know, kind of, you know, folding and, you know, losing money to all of their depositors. It's all a kind of like double standard, right? I mean, they won't allow them to.
Yeah. So just I love talking about all this like macro stuff, because it has huge implications with crypto and like just like our existence on Earth, right? This is affecting everybody. But let's get back to Boson Protocol just a little bit here. And I wanted to ask you specifically about April. So what's about to be released by Boson Protocol in April? And I have a kind of leading question up to this after you answer.
Well, this month, at the end of March, we are releasing the Decentralized widget. And so that's going to enable commerce in decentralized commerce in the metaverse. We have a whole host of other developments that we're going to be launching. We're integrating with some sort of major platforms, and you know, we've got some of this other sort of technology, like I mentioned, shell NFTs and stuff like that. I'm probably not supposed to be sharing all of this. Marketing will tell me off flirting, but we do have we have a queue of like technology features and stuff that's queued to be released, queued behind sort of marketing, really, which is a great place to be in. As I mentioned before, you know, it's actually a first for us. We've been waiting to, you know, build and release the protocol, and now, you know, everything else is much easier compared to building a protocol.
Yeah.
I wanted to also introduce sort of like our experiences so far in Decentraland and sort of like the metaverse. And one of the biggest discoveries that we've made, you know, just spending so much time in this specific kind of like metaverse, is sort of like the new types of business models that exist. So for example, imagine we take one of the kiosks from Boson Protocol, and that kiosk is branded with Tommy Hilfiger. And what typically would happen is, you know, Boson Protocol does this huge partnership with Tommy Hilfiger, and Boson Protocol installs this Tommy Hilfiger kiosk at your location in Decentraland. So what we learned is there's a lot of people that own land in Decentraland, a lot of, you know, actual human bodies, and they don't have a way to participate in like the commerce layer. And so what we developed is a way to distribute, let's say, your technology to a bunch of lands in Decentraland. So people would purchase these kiosks, and then they would be pushing Tommy Hilfiger to get people to come to their own, you know, property, come to my property, buy Tommy Hilfiger content.
Yeah, or just incorporate it as part of the experience, right?
Yeah. And ultimately what you gain is like a wider community pushing the brand on their own land, and they'll create their own experiences. They'll put games on their land, but all of a sudden it's like you're playing a game, and it's like, hey, I can like don some Tommy Hilfiger digital asset, and not only that, I can claim it as a physical item.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, from a business model perspective, is not only do you get like affiliate links or people pushing the brands, but they have an incentive, because for every transaction that occurs on their land, they get a little cut of the transaction. And so that's the technology we've pioneered with our platform. And a lot of these, you know, this is kind of like a unique podcast in the sense is that, you know, us specifically, we're kind of like in the same space, but we're also builders in the crypto space. And, you know, we sort of leverage this podcast to like do business development. So I wanted to get your take on like that business model, and, what's your just like knee-jerk reaction on that idea?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great business model, and it's one that can, you can also sort of integrate Boson into, because within the protocol there are, you can have, obviously the original seller gets their fee, and then you can have like these different fees for like, well, whether it's like a platform or a landowner, or these different specific fees. So that is that option is, you can use Boson for that use case as well, and run that same business model, and you guys can make the your kind of cut and promote it to landowners to make theirs as well. So and I think that kind of speaks to this whole notion of sort of programmability of Web3.
Yes.
And I think we've talked about provable assets. Once you've got provable assets, right, like in a computer, if you've got a 1 stored in a sector of memory, you can rely on that. You can execute on that, right? Likewise, if you've got provable assets, you can execute on them. And so I think what we're going to start seeing is this kind of what we call like programmable commerce, right? Where you can program these business models, you can plug them into other people's business models, and create this kind of what Professor Jason Potts, who's a blockchain economist, calls a kind of computable economy. So we published a paper with him. He talks about, when you've got provable assets that could be programmed all in the same substrate, you get to this computable economy where, you can start designing business models with loyalty and this, and you get this cut and the condition, you're token gated, and create this kind of computable economy as this next evolution of the economy.
Yeah, computable economy.
That's absolutely. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. And so I want to get a little bit deeper on this with you, kind of like in a probably separate call, but I think the ability to distribute this technology is very important, especially because I think in the metaverse, people don't have a lot to do, first of all. And they spent a ton of money on their land, and they need ways, instead of just flipping land, they need ways to like generate some sort of income as a business would.
Absolutely.
When you're a landowner. So I think that's like a very kind of interesting angle for you guys to kind of think about, like kind of like a seed that grows in your mind. But we're out of time. I really appreciate your time. Yeah, I know that you're extremely busy. You got a lot of stuff coming up. And
we'd love to have you back on again, because you mentioned you have plenty more technology releases in the pipeline. So we would like to discuss more about that.
Yeah, and also I want to get more into the macro discussions with you as well, just because we're always talking about it.
Yeah, to ourselves. We need some other input on these types of discussions. Yeah, is the sky falling or not?
Yeah. All right, Justin, appreciate your time. This Boson Protocol, definitely check it out. We're going to have all the links in the description. And we'd love to have you on.
Yeah, and if you want to see Boson Protocol in action, Metaverse Fashion Week starts very soon. So we'll have
next week, I think.
The announcement, the event details. Where in Decentralized specifically will the Boson Protocol in the fashion district, right? Or
well, it's in our land, which is called Boson Portal, which is adjacent to Vegas City, and we'll publish all the details. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay. So definitely look forward to that. This is the beginnings of the digital commerce revolution in the metaverse. It's happening in Decentraland this week, so definitely take a peek.
Exactly.
All right, Justin, thank you so much, and appreciate you joining us, and we will catch you on the next podcast, guys. Thank you.
Bye, Justin. Thank you.
Thank you.